Alright, I'm gonna give this one another shot today. So, let's keep going.
当主様は具合が優れられないとのことだ。せっかくこうして1年ぶりの会合に集まってくれた諸君と昼食を共にできないことを非常に残念にしておられた。ゴーダ、ランチを始めてくれ。
かしこまりました。それでは本日の昼食を始めさせていただきます。
南條先生、そんなにお父様のお具合は悪いの？せめて顔くらい見せてくれてもいいわよね。
体調というよりは機嫌ですな。こればかりはつける薬がありませんので。
おいおい、機嫌ってまたかよ。そりゃないぜ。こちとら秋のクソ忙しい時期にスケジュール都合してご機嫌伺いに来てるんだ。それをよ。
よかったじゃないか、ルドルフ。ご機嫌は伺えたんだ。それとも不機嫌な親父殿を私に代わりお前が説得して連れてきてくれるのかね。
まさか。
Rudolph shrugged. Apparently, even though Rudolph seemed to resent the way his father did whatever he pleased, he'd rather avoid seeing his father's face if he could help it.
夕食までにはその機嫌治りそうなの？クラウス兄さん。
そんなことは知らんよ。親父殿に直接聞いてみるといい。もっとも声をかけない方が機嫌の治りは早いと思うね。
源氏さんだけだよ、じい様の機嫌を直せるのは。情けないぜ。自分の親の機嫌を使用人に直させるんだからよ。
ジェシカ、余計なことは言わなくていい。
She planned for a complaint to be only heard by her cousins, but it had reached even Cross's ears. Scolded, Jessica scowled and turned away, sulking.
機嫌がうんぬんってことは病状はそんな悪くないんじゃねえの？元気がないってんならともかく、機嫌が悪いってのは少なくとも気はしっかりしてる証拠だぜ。
おじい様は特に強い気力をお持ちだからね。でも体が必ずしもそれに伴えるとは限らないよ。去年からずっと余命3ヶ月って言われ続けてる。最初の診断が正しいならおじい様は気力だけで流らえてるってことになる。気遣ってあげないといけないよ。
Lunch started with the family's head seat still empty. The man who should be sitting there was already old, and the brilliant glory which had rebuilt the Urshiramiya family in a single lifetime was being forgotten. Nobody seemed to feel uncomfortable when the meal began with that seat still empty. Oh, that was it? Okay. It's weird, I have to, advance it myself by clicking, and I don't know that it's, that it's not waiting for, I'm not waiting for it, that it's waiting for me. The Urshiramiya family conference was held once every year. It took place on the first weekend of October. If a normal family were to use a pretentious name like Family Conference, you'd expect it to be nothing more than a reunion of rarely seen relatives who greet each other surrounded by buckets of sushi. However, because the sons and siblings have been lent a great fortune, in the Urshiramiya family, which considers only those that achieve success in business adults, it literally was a conference. How much of the fortune was invested? What kind of business was conducted? How much was earned? As a result, how much of the fortune borrowed from the main family can be repaid? Or possibly, how much will be borrowed for future business ventures? What lessons have they learned? And what could they learn from their mistakes? It seems that topics like these have been discussed very seriously in the past. My dad called it a bed of nails. Apparently, it used to be a very serious family meeting, bathed in harsh and angry voices. Even on a good year, it was common for someone to get slapped. However, that had become a thing of the past. Now, with everyone pursuing their own business ventures and achieving success, it was a normal yearly get-together. Even so, hearing about grandfather's condition caused a significant amount of stress. So, while to us grandchildren, it was nothing more than a simple meeting, to our parents, it was still a real stomachache. I guess that since the ringleader was absent for various reasons, today's lunch was even more delicious. The phrase, "while the demon is not around, everyone can relax," comes to mind. Well then, let's introduce Jessica's father, whose face I hadn't seen for 6 years. The man sitting to my father's left was his older brother and father of Jessica. Cross Oji-san, I suppose? Right, Ushiramiya Cross, Kinzo's first child. As the oldest of the 4 siblings, he leads the family conference. However, the other siblings think that he's trying to get all of the inheritance for himself, and this further strains the tensions between them. He's a real estate investor and has put a lot of money into the development of a resort. However, his results have been harshly criticized. I wonder if that's because he hasn't done well, or because he's cut some less than ethical corners. This name sure is easy to read. Cross. Since everyone had these weird names, our naming sense was pretty twisted. So Cross actually didn't seem that bad. I'd even started to think it was pretty cool. Just like with Aunt Natsui, I didn't have many memories of speaking with Cross Oji-san. He had never been one to talk to children, and I felt like he was always talking with the adults, just like Aunt Natsui. From my father's gossip, it seems that he was a pretty spiteful and unreasonable person. If what my father said is true, he used to be very domineering as the oldest sibling, and was hated by Aunt Eva, Aunt Rosa, and the rest of the family. It looks like he's having a friendly chat with the rest of the family, doesn't it? Oh well, even if their relationship was bad when they were children, sometimes when people grow up and go their separate ways, their relationship changes. That's probably what this was. After all, they all had children of about the same age. By sharing the same family environment, they probably profited by exchanging opinions. Maybe because of that, a short while ago, the circle of parents began to discuss the exams Jessica and I were taking. Jessica, in order to escape the discussion of exams with my father sitting on her left, purposefully faced right while firing off a rapid series of comments, so as to not show any weakness. Moving on, let's look at the end opposite from Cross and the others. In the very last seat at the table, an old gentleman with a very sturdy physique sat facing Kirie-san. This was my first time meeting him. I'd only just been introduced to him, but it seemed that he was a grandfather's personal doctor, a man called Nanjo. And attending physician Nanjo, Kinzo's attending physician, and a longtime friend. He once ran a hospital on Ninjima, but he turned it over to his son and now enjoys his old age in peace. Now that Kinzo's constant suspicion has reached extraordinary heights, Nanjo is one of the very few people he trusts. Thanks to Nanjo's big-hearted nature, he's been able to continue his friendship with Kinzo, despite the latter's tendency to fly into a rage at the slightest provocation. And it looks like, assuming these don't fill out, it looks like we filled out the entire chart. Interestingly enough. So maybe that's everyone important that we're going to be meeting? I had heard that he used to own a huge clinic on the nearby Ninjima Island, but he turned it over to his son, and then began living a life of leisure in his old age. He had known grandfather since the very beginning, when the mansion was first constructed on this island, and had built up a relationship over several decades. I thought that he might be grandfather's companion in his suspicious hobbies, but surprisingly, it seems that he is grandfather's chess partner. I see. That kind of hobby seems very like our grandfather, with his love of Western style. You could probably say that he was the only person who could enter Rokenjima, and was neither a family member nor a servant. He gave an impression of a calm old gentleman, as he listened to Kyrie and the other woman's conversation. After staying by our short-tempered grandfather's side for so long, his big heart was nothing to laugh at. Still, Even if he was a family doctor, having anyone outside the Ushiramiya family attend the family conference was a little odd. I imagine that because grandfather's condition had grown much worse, it may have become one of the major topics of discussion. George was just saying it too. Reports that grandfather's remaining life was very short had been appearing continuously since around a year ago. It was a nasty story, but grandfather was an extremely rich man. At the time of his death, his wealth would suddenly be released, along with repaired stomach acid, and would probably lead to ulcers. Now, I don't understand that. What does that mean? Does that mean his parents are throwing up? Or does that mean his parents are going to go out of control? I'm not understanding that. With this kind of thing, the greater the share, the more trouble would be caused. This would probably also be included in the family conference. Oh well, it's not like it had anything to do with us children. Finally, even though he was absent, let me introduce our grandfather. Yep, we know the grandfather, don't you worry. The person who should be sitting in that incipient's chair was Ushiramiya Kinzo. It really sucks. Everyone else in the family has these weird names, but he himself took this perfectly normal name. If only his name were written Kinzo, but he'd totally let us call him Goldsmith or something. That'd be totally awesome. And I'm sure that's one of those lost in translation jokes that makes absolutely no sense in English. If anyone understands what that means, I would greatly appreciate you letting me know. As you can probably guess from the topics that have been raised, he was a frightening person with an extremely short temper. Because I was one of the grandchildren, and hadn't met the family since elementary school, I had no memory of being beaten, but it seems that our parents were raised with an iron fist. That earlier conversation between my father and Cross-Oji-san about who should go try to convince grandfather to come out seems oddly funny if we take this into account. In order to tell grandfather's story, you have to first go back and recount that episode that occurred before the Showa era, 1926 to 1989. Ooh, get to learn a little bit of history. Until the Meiji 1868 to 1912 and Tasho 1912 to 1926 eras, the Ushiramiya family was great and prosperous. Now, I'm going to say this right now, I have little to no knowledge of the different ages of history of Japan, so almost none of this is relevant. The years are, but the rest of it doesn't have much of any relevance to me. I don't understand it. They owned several spinning mills, so while they just laughed heartily every day, the money kept rolling in, making them very wealthy. Incidentally, grandfather, as a member of the branch family, essentially had nothing to do with the main family. Distantly separated from the head's inheritance, his relationship with the head house was also very distant, apparently. Even so, oh wow, spooky and red. Even so, during the Great Kanto earthquake in the year Tasho 12, 1923, the mansion owned by the Ushiramiya family in Odawara was flattened. The spinning mills in Tokyo were all burned down in a huge fire. And the Ushiramiya family lost most of its wealth and family members in an instant. It then became a matter of who in the main family would become the heir, and it seemed as though no one except the branch family, which included Kinzo, was left. Kinzo himself later said that it was such good luck, as it was though fate itself had been turned upside down. With that, grandfather's normal life did a 180. He was entrusted with reviving the wealth that the dying Ushiramiya family had almost completely lost. Naturally, just because he'd been entrusted with this task didn't mean he could accomplish it. It seems that the surrounding people weren't really expecting much. However, from this point on, grandfather began displaying his extraordinary talent and good luck. Grandfather used all of the family funds, and everything from the hair on his head to his toenails as collateral, to borrow a massive amount of money. That makes sense? That doesn't make sense. Created a gigantic supply of funds, and soon revived the family business. It was like tumbling down a hill on a bike without any brakes. and then jumping onto a neighboring bike, and then another one. Just like some crazy street performance. Probably anyone would have thought that grandfather had no business ability. Even so, with an unbelievable amount of good luck and miracles, with coincidences piling up and every chance taken advantage of. Before anyone knew it, he began to make connections with the occupying forces. At the time, MacArthur and the GHQ were in charge. Now, are those, like, companies or families or, like, individuals? I'm not sure. Grandfather, in the twinkle of the eye, began succeeding in business under the protection of the occupying forces, quickly becoming very rich. At this point, it was no longer luck, but information that won the day. He must have made some seriously thick connections with the occupying forces. Grandfather knew beforehand about emergency demands that would be made for the Korean War. No, on the contrary, he must have foreseen these special procurements from the very beginning, and started eating into his business. As we read in the history books, all of Japan made a large profit off the emergency demands for the Korean War, but in actuality, that didn't happen. Only a very limited number of the super rich played the money game, and made an easy profit. Most of the citizens remained poor. In other words, Grandfather was an extremely lucky member of this group of winners. This all happened during the year Showa 25, 1950, I think. And since the year following the Great Kanto earthquake was Taisho 13, 1924, that means Grandfather was able to revive the near-dead Ushiromiya family in only about 20 years to a level even higher than it had been before. With that, you'd think that he would revive the main family in Odawara, but for some reason, he went and did something as crazy as buying an entire small island in the Izu archipelago. Buying an entire island is not something you can ordinarily do today. However, Grandfather was clever. He contacted the GHQ and applied for the establishment of a marine resource base. He acquired this island as a business property, and then threw that away and claimed it as his own plot of land. After the war, there were prevention measures against food shortages, and furthermore, having the sponsorship of the GHQ meant that nobody could oppose him. It seems that the Tokyo metropolis had almost no money at the time, and offered this land. Later, Tokyo made difficulties by telling Kinzo to return the land, but the pushy GHQ intervened. Anyway, it seems as though under-the-table bribes worked perfectly. In the end, the city gave up in frustration. Grandfather, with considerable skill and blessed with good luck, managed to weather the stormy seas of that period, obtaining a vast fortune and his own island. Of course, it wasn't all luck. He was skilled with English, and this was cultivated by his Western obsession. Using this as a weapon, he was able to take a bite out of the GHQ. Sounds like a company to me. A mansion was immediately built on the island. That would be this mansion. Grandfather, with his Western style, made this once uninhabited island, Rokinjima, a canvas upon which he could realize his dreams to his heart's content. With the Western mansion that he had always imagined, overflowing with emotion, to the beautiful garden where various roses had been planted. And a private beach, where no one other than himself would ever be permitted to leave a footprint. If a boy could have this much, it would be a dream come true. After that, making use of his huge fortune, he became a large stockholder in the extremely stable iron and steel industry, and was able to live an easy and comfortable life using just the dividends. Well, he's just that incredible. This kind of person usually has the ability to foresee and predict the future, or at least that is how they are portrayed. Grandfather denies all of that, repeatedly saying that he was simply blessed with extraordinary luck. Anyway, even a lord like that, with all of his dreams made real, can't help but grow increasingly odd when locked up alone on an island. Everyone had known for a long time of his Western obsession. but none of her parents really knows when his bizarre black magic hobby began. Did his love of black magic begin way back when he became fascinated with everything Western? Or, possibly, did his miraculous stretch of good luck, which allowed him to revive the family, cause him to feel a mysterious power in himself? At some point, Grandfather began to make research of black magic his life's work. He filled his study up with suspicious books, chemicals, and magical items as he became increasingly bizarre. I heard that, as a successful man, he had the right to decide how he wanted to live the rest of his life, and those surrounding him warmly watched over him, but that's definitely a lie. They probably were just driven away, thinking, "That's disgusting. I don't want to get involved." Well, that agitated period was like a big gamble, with both opportunities and risks. Let's say Grandfather was born in this time period. He would have had no opportunities, and would probably have advanced like a chess piece from mandatory education to college at a leisurely pace, never becoming more than an average salaryman. If that happened, he'd probably have sat somewhere, happily talking behind his boss's back. No, not in a mansion's dining hall. More like a table at some bar. If that were the case, I'm sure that this would be a much more comfortable family conference. Alright, that's enough of the old geezer story. More importantly, let's talk about this incredible lunch. A brand new car! Incredible lunch! Yeah, and that's where I got to. I will make sure only to record up to 30 minutes from now on at a time, just to reduce the chances of anything bad happening. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. And we'll come back here next time for more Umineko. Bye!